own Paul Stark. And it is it's a pretty terrific video, really enjoyable for anybody who is passionate about activism for any reason. And it chronicles 300 years of art and activism from abolition to present day. So you can check that out. Well, it's on our website now, I think. But yeah, or it's on our Facebook page now. So, without further ado, let me introduce Shepard Verbas, who is our moderator this evening. Shepard serves the Loft LGBT Community Center. Shepard joined the Loft team in 2015 and now serves as the center's assistant director of programs and services. Shepard earned a Bachelor of Science in Special Education and Early Childhood Education, and much of their work today with the Loft is with young transgender peer groups and family members, and as well as senior outreach. But a lot of your focus is with young members of the LGBTQ community. They have co-chaired Listen, Hudson Valley LGBTQ Youth Outreach Initiative, and Shared Stories, Open Minds. A passionate advocate for LGBTQ plus issues. They are especially passionate about transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary communities. Please welcome Shepard Verbas. Next, we're going to welcome Cynthia. Oh, I should have practiced this. Bonsignore. Okay, close enough. Master at Arms with the U.S. Navy. She served honorably in Japan from 2011 to 2015, serving openly as herself for 3.5 years while advocating for personal rights of service members. She worked with local Navy legal office and Navy hospital system and earned the right to dress and live more authentically. Dedicated to improving the lives of others and self, she now works in medicine and is pursuing opportunities in medical science and human rights advocacy. Please welcome Cynthia. And next, Dr. Robbins Gottlock, who is an MD and MBA and Director of LGBTQIA+ Health Center of Excellence at Northwell Health Physician Partners. Dr. Gottlock oversees Phillips Hospital's inpatient physicians as well as the Family Medicine Residency Program. He is Medical Director of Northwell Health Physician Partners, and it is especially proud of founding the LGBTQIA+ Health Center of Excellence in Sleepy Hollow. The center specializes in giving competent and empathetic care to the LGBTQIA+ community. Dr. Gottlock began his medical career at Beth Israel Hospital in 2002 and started working at Phelps in 2017. Along the way, he earned an MBA from NYU. Dr. Gottlock, his husband, and their 4 children live in Sleepy Hollow. Welcome, Robbins. Last but certainly not least is Ossining's own Jacqueline Bush. She was with the VA Hudson Valley Healthcare System in Montrose. She retired in 2017 after working with veterans, specializing in trauma therapy at the VA Hudson Valley Montrose for 23 years. Before the VA, she worked with abused and neglected children in Oakland County and in the Michigan court system. She received her master's degree in social work from Fordham University. Jackie lives in Ossining and spends time with her family and dog, Zoe. Welcome. Welcome, Jacqueline. And so Shepard is going to kick us off with some questions that they have, and then we will be incorporating some of your questions as well. So go ahead and raise your hand if you haven't gotten a card yet, and we'll pass them along, and then collect them from you.
Yes, don't be shy. Please ask questions. That is why we're here tonight. Ask your questions now so we don't run out of time and you don't get to them, and we'll try to get them answered. Thank you all for coming tonight. First of all, I just want to take a minute and pass around the mic so that everybody here can, we heard bios, but I really want to kind of say a little bit more about what actually brings our three panelists here in this seat tonight, and why, what kind of personal experience they might be bringing to the table, so that we can actually curate our questions better while we ask. So if you don't mind, just introducing yourselves with your pronouns, of course, and just telling us a little bit about why you joined us tonight.
Hello, my name is Cynthia. You can call me she, ma'am, etc. I was a Master of Arms in the military. As a military police officer. So I'm familiar with the regulations of the Department of Defense and the U.S. Navy. I worked together with Lieutenant Corey Dean, who was our legal officer for the base, and the medical branch for the 7th Fleet, to basically work through all the regulations to figure out what they actually mean and interpret them properly. So I can help assist with any questions you might have geared towards that, as well as the actual overall military life. You know, there's even more to just than the actual regulations in them themselves, as the social aspect and the kind of family togetherness that the military can actually foster. So with that, I pass on to my fellow panelists.
Thank you. So Robbins, Gottlock, I use the pronouns he, him, and I don't have a military background, but I do have a very conservative group background, kind of similar to the military, which is a Mormon church. I used to be Mormon growing up, and coming from a conservative background like that posed its own challenges as well, and trying to fit in and be myself. Over my career as a family medicine doctor, I'm a generalist, I see everybody. I've had a special emphasis in the LGBT community. My husband and I here live in Sleepy Hollow, and I created a center up here. Westchester doesn't really have a lot of out providers who provide care, especially to the transgender community, who can do hormones and help people through transitions, and that's one of my expertises, and that's what I do in our clinic right here for Phelps Hospital down in Sleepy Hollow. So I'm proud to bring that to the area, and I enjoy serving really multiple counties as a doctor who can help this community.
Hi, I'm Jackie Bush, social worker for over 35 years. I worked with children initially, but the Vietnam War really resonated with me because of my two brother-in-laws served. One has passed from Agent Orange. The other is permanently disabled with heart conditions, PTSD. So I got to a point where an opportunity at the VA opened up, and I went in and got it. The veteran population is the most unique population I've ever worked with. They have their medical issues like everybody else, their marital, social issues like everyone else. But on top of that, they were part of something bigger than them for a very, very long time. And when they lose the support of that community, something unravels in a very deep way. I spent the next 23 years specializing in trauma therapy. And trauma comes in many, many different colors and shapes. There's the combat trauma, which everybody understands very easily, but they don't understand necessarily the sexual trauma issues that go hand in hand with many of our military personnel. So that is how I became very interested in trauma. And
may I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in a half hour. Please note that the computers will be shutting down in about 15 minutes. Please save all your work.
So the final end of it all, I learned over my 23 years how many veterans were not disclosing who they are in their records, and even in closed doors in therapy. Do not put this in my record. Do not put this in my record. It will affect my ability to work. It will affect my ability to do anything outside of this wall. But having to live in that kind of shade is very difficult. So that's where I come from, and if you have any questions along those lines with clinical therapy, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, so we got some questions here. Okay, one sec. Okay, so it seems like this question might be more directed toward you, Robbins. The question is, why is LGBTQ health so important, and how does this affect our education on the military ban?
LGBTQ health hasn't been assessed or addressed very well historically. It's been a group that's been ignored. We don't have research on it. for transgender health, there's more research is developing, but a lot of it historically hasn't been there. So it's a work in progress, and it's a community that's very underserved. So having expertise and knowledge about that is very important. There's not a lot of providers who know it. They're well-intentioned people, but it's a specialty in itself and requires education. And I think this community needs that. It needs more providers. One of the things that I'm trying to do is just get all of the doctors in our groups at least some general knowledge of transgender care, and then if they can just create an environment, a space where people feel welcome, that is part of the process, and then getting that expertise makes a difference over the long run.
Does anybody else have anything to add to that, or why LGBT health is so important, and what impact does this have on the education around the transgender fan? Or do we
I think I might be able to add on to that a little bit. Let's see. Well, one thing I actually noticed when I was actually starting going to the VA, and there was a comment. Keep in mind, the gentleman who made the comment was saying it as a crude joke, but it does kind of highlight the overall problem in healthcare. We often think, okay, well, transgender health is not where it needs to be, but truthfully, women's health is not exactly where it should be either. The joke he made was, it's like, well, what do you expect? We just started treating women only a couple years ago, and this is in 2015. 2015, we started, around this time, we started treating just regular women for health at the VA, roughly, right? Is that correct?
We always treated, but it was never an inviting environment. So when a female veteran would come to our facility, and any other, because I went on many conferences throughout the country, it's just not very inviting. Most female military veterans that come to us have a history of sexual military trauma, and it's severe. So, you can't put them in a crowded waiting room with a bunch of men. They need safety when during the winter, going to a parking lot and things like that. So they would come, not feel comfortable, and leave. I know that effort has been changing, too slow for what I see. But the other issue that Cynthia sort of came on to is the medications that are needed, the hormone therapy that is needed by this population. They know their body, and then the VA comes out and says, okay, we're going to give you one drug to treat everybody, and this is the dose, and if you don't accept that, but we're giving you your treatment. So is that true? People need to be educated that the spectrum is huge, and just saying one drug fits all just doesn't work.
One more thing is just the evidence, the scientific evidence shows that transgender people are excellent in the military. There is no reason medically, it's on the film again, that they should be discriminated against or removed from our military. It's not based in science.
And just another thing to add, even towards probably questions coming forward. One of the kind of big issues I think I've noticed within healthcare, the military, or really any aspect of life that we experience, is a lot of our systems are in dire need of an overhaul. We have a lot of restructuring that needs to be done to a lot of different systems, but not just as that, but we need to also develop systems of better accountability. And even in the military, as you probably, if you were able to pick up in the documentary, there is with certain, if they're transgender, if they identify as a male, generally you notice probably it was a little bit easier for them to be accepted or treated, or depending on where they were, versus if they identified as a woman. So really, there you go. I mean, welcome to womanhood. There's your first double standard. But on top of that, holding people also responsible to the actual appropriate rule. I'm sure a lot of us in here may have been pulled over by a cop once or twice who's like, you didn't do this or that quite right. And it's like, well, how do you define that? Well, it's my word against yours, so that's you know, that's part of it, you know, so it's this overall accountability and how we actually utilize the systems that are there to help and benefit us all.
Very good. Wow, thank you. Somebody just asked this question. Why would anyone feel like serving in the military when we have such an erratic president who might declare war for his political advantage? Why would anyone feel like serving in the military? So I guess if we were going to make this more trans-specific, or if we want to take a spin on it, where why would trans people, you know, want to serve in a military, even though there's, you know, some unsupportive, you know, legislation and talk.
That's yours.
Well, I think we've all had a bad boss or manager who's just did not need to be in that position. But the thing about it is, just because maybe our supervisor just does not care or does not really want any part of what they're doing, doesn't mean the people underneath them doesn't care. You know, there's a lot of people, for good or bad, who truly want to make a difference in the world. Whether in my own story, in case, you know, I don't necessarily believe in all the wars and all the military. But I did believe that, you know, the military is a good option for a lot of people to start a life for themselves, to help support their country in a way. It can also give them opportunity and tools to expand upon themselves. So for an individual who does want to really expand their life and really want to help themselves and help the other country, the military is actually a very good way to get started on that.
So a lot of these questions I see are about support. How can we support the trans community, and how can we show that we're allies to the trans community? And so I want to pose this question. In the film we saw it also when they're all prepping for the meetings with the high executives and everything like that. They have to come up with this sort of like elevator pitch about like who they are, why is this important, and you know, oftentimes when you're talking to somebody who may be more close-minded to your point or may not know so much about trans rights and things like that, they give you such a limited window of time to kind of enter into and show, you know, what you're about and try to educate them, right? So I want to pose a question. What do you think the most common argument against trans people serving in the military is? And what is your elevator pitch against that argument? So what is your elevator pitch for trans people serving in the military? Does that make sense?
To be honest, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. So I met someone one time and we bonded, and they not very big on, like, you know, the transgender, you know, and the troops and this and that, but they love me. But you can serve, you're a woman, I know you, it's not a big deal. But they're in this illusion that, you know, well, you're just a regular girl, they're not thinking about you. Kind of like with, you know, let's deport Mexicans, they're killers and rapists and all this we've heard. And, you know, the gentleman next door is thinking, well, he's not talking about my friend Hector, who, you know, works so very hard for me day after day for like almost nothing. He would never do that. But, you know, sometimes you have to take things for face value. And that's exactly what's going on, and that they're not really taking it for face value. They're kind of in their own mind going through a few different psychological processes, and where they're kind of almost creating this own illusion for themselves. Like, well, no, this is not that person. This is just a regular person. Kind of like in the video again, where, you know, it's like, well, why in God's name would they have you in women's uniform? You're clearly a man. That's ridiculous. But at the lower end, when they're enforcing the laws and regulations of the DoD in that particular branch, that's what it is, or that's how they're interpreting it. And even at a higher end, and a more educated, as you know, our fellow panelists are, you gotta realize not everyone has a master or an MBA and may be interpreting the same rules and regs as the way you particularly made them. especially if they don't have, let's say, a higher education that allows them to understand better the linguistics involved in the law that they're enforcing.
I find that people oftentimes pose it in theoretical terms. What would it be like to have transgender people serving in the military? And I always like to refocus on the reality that they do serve in the military. They're there, they're successful, and things don't fall apart, and the units work well, and our country's as safe as ever. So I like to focus on the reality and get away from the theoretical and ground people in what's really happening.
One is, how can we be more sensitive? I know one of the biggest complaints that I've had from this community when working as a therapist is they're like, how many people have asked you, when did you know you were heterosexual? You know, it's like getting a question, when did you know you were trans? When did you know, those kind of very insensitive, when someone identifies themselves as a male or a female, respect that. Cynthia's had incidences where, I mean, she's legally changed her name, everything is, that was a miracle. Changing military records.
Well, they're not even all complete yet either.
Well, we're working on it.
Yeah.
But, respect that, because even after seeing her ID, she identifies herself, and to still be referred to as sir and Mr. and a man is very disrespectful. So, basically being a respectful human being will cover it, That's it.
In our last time around support, again, if you could share just like 1, 2, 3 words that you would give to anybody in the trans community to show your support for them. What's a motto you want them to live by? Right now when there's so much opposition and there's so much talk about them being invalid and erased and everything like that. What's a quick thing you would want to say? Hey, listen. Well, what's something that you could tell our trans community?
Be who you are. I mean, I give that to everyone. Be who you are, because when you're true to yourself, you can live a fuller life.
Well, in the Navy, we had 3 core values: honor, courage, and commitment. I think those are very good values. When we can always take the shortcut and always try to screw over the next person to try to get a little bit ahead, and we will probably reap greater rewards in the short term. But in the long term, we're really just destroying everything and making it a lot harder for everyone, including ourselves down the road. So don't take the easy path just because it's easy. Try to do and hold out for a little bit more with perseverance and the courage to actually do the right thing, because then we'll all...
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 10 minutes. If you have any items you wish to check out, please bring them to the circulation desk now. The library will be open tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.
I always give people advice to live their life, be out, be proud as much as you can if you're in a safe space. Only by being visible can that make an impact in the world.
So you asked for us to end at this time?
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah, and we think we do. Okay, cool. So I want to say thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you all for your questions. If there was a question that wasn't answered that you posed, I'm sure that, are we open to answer them individually? So, yes, so thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to all of our panelists and to our guest moderator. It was really terrific having you here. I only wish we had more time that we could talk. But we will take a picture with the panelists, but then after that everyone can hang around for a few minutes before we turn off the lights and they kick us out.